To begin at the beginning is a good place to start.
Started my string of beads with an acorn because an acorn reminds me of England, where I was born. Amongst our family, I was the ailing child, and every winter I had bronchitis, but really it was undiagnosed asthma. I think I was 17, and I got another bout of winter bronchitis, and my mother said to the doctor, "What are we going to do with her?" And she said, "Go somewhere where there's some sunshine." So my mother said, "Well, where will we go?" And she said, "Well, either California or Adelaide." As a consequence, my whole family moved to Adelaide in 1958.
Family. Well, I was brought up in a family, number 2 son of 4. I had an elder brother and 2 younger sisters. And I had so many uncles and aunts. And being a storyteller, when I got into secondary years, even the monks were worried about how many uncles and aunties I had. Well, I thought everybody was like that, and everybody still had 4 grandparents, which I did at the time.
This little red heart is the time when I met Bernie, and it all happened because Jacqueline, who was going to be his partner at the annual Sacred Heart College ball, decided to go with Jimmy Lewis, whom she married later. And so Bernie was stranded. He didn't have a partner for this ball, and he was telling his Uncle John, he said, "There are 3 girls there." And Bernie said, "Well, what age are they?" And he said, 17, 18 and 19. And Bernie said, "I'll have the 19-year-old. So we've been together ever since. So that is 60 years now. Got the blue bead here is for Bernie still being at sea.
A neighbour of ours, he'd been a marine engineer, and he filled me full of stories of the sea, and particularly the engineering bit. But the best part of the merchant service was that you could choose where to live. So it was a merchant service, and the other good thing about the merchant service is they don't shoot anybody. I was on the water, and before we got married, and Margaret said I could stay on the water, but so long as I didn't go on a passenger ship, so I didn't want to go on a passenger ship anyway. No, even before that, as a 3-year-old, during the war with the troop trains and goods trains going through the Goodwood station, the ground shaking with these monsters. Every boy in my school wanted to be an engine driver.
Our house at Bedford Power was completed in 1964, and we lived there for 36 years in the end.
There are huge disappointments. One of them was we had 4 children, Margaret and I was able, because I was in the merchant service, to arrange matters for me to be home for the birth of our children, first 3. But alas, number 4, Meg, I couldn't arrange it as such.
Well, Catherine was our firstborn, and I got a fancy little bead that I thought looked like her, because we've always called her Lady Catherine. This is a lovely little precise bead.
Its original name was Maisie, but I didn't like Maisie. So I said, I've altered it a bit from the original, and so I called it Lady Catherine.
This brightly coloured bead, this orange one, is Louise, and she's always loved colour, and particularly red and yellow.
And then came the second one. And I had to build this rather faster than the first one. So this took 4 years to build, and it's 42, number 42, and it's called Lilibel.
They all came within 3 years, and Paul has been the artistic one with his cooking.
Then we had another tank engine that it took 5 years to build, and it was engine number 3, and it's called Paulie Boy, which is what we call it.
Well, and of course the next child was Meg, and her favourite colour is blue, and this is a pretty, and it's got hearts on it.
And last but not least, by a long way, is Megan's Magusta. It took 8 years to build, and it was engine number 4. She barracked for the bays, so we got yellow and black, and she didn't like Norwood, so we put that up there. And there's an Australian flag on one side and a Union Jack on the other, because Catherine Mary insists that they are half-castes. On the front of the lamp is Queen Victoria on one side and Edward the Seventh on this side of the lamp. And on the very front is a little silver horse, because Megan's was riding horses at the time.
So my dad would be at sea for 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off, and my mum was at home. So when Dad was at sea, the house was run in a totally different fashion. When Dad was home, the place ran like a ship. We had tea on the table at 6 o'clock. We all sat around. It was very regimented, very routine, very strict, very structured. Cat even knew when it was allowed inside and when it had to be outside.
There was suggestions from the children's friends at school, that your father's gone away. To overcome this, I think my dad had put up a map of Australia, big map, and Margaret shifted the little flag around to where I was ever in crossing the Timor Sea or the Indian Ocean or wherever. But that made the children quite comfortable, especially after they had each in turn had their little visits over an aeroplane ride and a few days with it on the ship. It was to give them a sense of travel and what's over the next hill. Living ashore every day is far different to the profession I took on, marine engineering. Your life comes in steps, and they're unsure in the social world. And there's a consequence to this. Your acquaintances come from around the world. They're not local in any true sense of the word. When you come ashore, you become very conscious of cliques. Be it in the church congregation, or even in the family. So that leaves mother at home with the children, and the Weet-Bix's got to be on the table, so she has to have the purse. And that's the way we started, that's the way we finished. We started with 2 and 9pence when we got back from our honeymoon. 2 and 9pence.
One thing that's unique with myself that the other 3 didn't experience was having Dad home all the time. He was away for 6 weeks and home for 6 weeks for forever for us, and except that he came ashore while I was still at school, and so I was the only one to experience having a dad 7 days a week and 24 hours a day, which was really special.
Yeah, there was lots of memories of both Mum and Dad down there at the Coorong and all the camping and all that sort of thing. But there was a trip I had with Dad down to Cape Jaffa, and that was a really special time. But then really I spent a lot of time with Dad when I went overseas, and I caught up with him a couple of times each year, and we went to all sorts of different places. A place called Llangofno or something over there in Wales. That was definitely one of our favourites. That was a special place because it was just a very picturesque little valley with a steam heritage society running their vintage trains down the line, and that was just very special.
Mum would have the cricket on in the kitchen doing the ironing, and Dad would be down in the shed doing what Dad did down the shed with the cricket on the radio. Mum was preferably England but supported everybody else. Dad was Aussie. You'd hear, "One of you lot, go and tell your dad we just got another run, we got someone out." So you had to run down the back steps, go down to the shed and say, "We got another run, somebody just got out." And then you'd hear Dad holler, "Hey kid!" One of us would go down, "Go and tell your mother we got another run, someone just got out." So it was it ended up being a family of kids running up and down the stairs and the parents having a conversation about cricket.
We used to have special holidays where we'd go down to the Coorong when we were growing up, and we went up to Ayers Rock and over to Perth, and all that happened because he was able to be home for most of the school holidays, and he was here for, he didn't have to have a week off or anything. He actually had his 6 weeks off, so that worked really well, which a lot of kids that I went to school with didn't have any of that. And also I remember, when Dad was home over the Christmas holidays, he'd take me down to the beach every day, or pretty much every day, and that was really special.
This little blue bead it has a rose, a pink rose in the centre. Reminds me of the time when Meg, she was 13, she was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. So she was in a lot of pain for years. And this just reminded me of the courage that she had with the pain.
That's me, and this is my last ship, the Canopus. That was 1986. I left the water when I was 50, and our first grandchild, she was born not long after.
Fancy bead is our first grandchild was born, Jessica and Jeffs, and I remember the day she was born. She was born on a nice sunny day, And I walked down the corridor, and being the grandmother, I was allowed in, and I could hear this little voice in this bassinet, and it was gurgling and gurgling and gurgling, and I thought, my goodness, Jessica Ann, she hasn't stopped talking since. All these three boys were born very close together. Louise and Russell had Aidan. Now, Aidan and I used to go fishing. I used to take him down to Glenelg on the tram, but he had all his equipment in a shopping trolley on wheels, and he knew all about the tides, and he knew what size fish he was allowed to take. And when we got home, I'd show him how to descale it, and we'd have the fish, if we were lucky to get a fish, we'd have it for breakfast. Dale, Jeff's, was born. His other grandmother had a wonderful little description of him, and talking about you'd hear the car arrive, and you'd take a deep breath, and you'd hide all the ornaments and put everything out of reach, and by the time you got to the front door you were out of breath, and the parents wondered why you were out of breath. And then the third blue bead is Nathan. Louise is Nathan. Now Nathan's got a bit of gold mingled in with his blue, and because that is representing the times, the many times he told me how special he was. He always boasted that I'm special, and he sure is. This pink one is for Taryn. She came along the tail end Charlie, and she was so looked forward to, and we were all on tender hooks because after two boys, their mother wanted a girl. Anyway, we all heaved a big sigh of relief when it was Tara, and she's kept us on our toes ever since. Yeah, I was busy, and with the three children, the world news really was Christy and Bernard performing the first heart transplant operation. And little did I know that within a number of years I'd be having open heart surgery myself. Yes, I was 46 when I had my heart surgery, and in 1995 now, my little red bead reminds me of waking up in the middle of the night and having a little bit of chest pain. I never had a lot of pain. And I hear a little voice say to me, "It's all right, Margaret, you've had an arrest, and but we got you back in 30 seconds. Another red bead, but this time it's Bernie's turn. And there's a bit of an indent in this particular bead, because this was when he was really troubled with ulcers on his legs, so that was... Now we're back onto the red beads again for me, and this is when I had my incisional hernia. The cardiologist wanted me to, or suggested that I had a defibrillator implanted to help my recovery. Well, that turned out to be the problem, and it nearly killed me. I have another red bead, these dreadful red beads. And I woke up one morning with feeling a lump in my tummy, and lo and behold, I had a ovarian cyst. Another red bead was in 1999, and I'd had some chest pain, but we were managing it, and they decided that I would have to have angioplasty. So that meant that they had to recall half the team back from the Grand Prix. So I went on to another red bead. This was Bernie's accident. When the wind blew the car door onto him, and he ended up with 3 fractures in his femur. And then we got to another red bead. Last year I was diagnosed with bowel cancer. This little bead here represents the COVID-19 with all the little fingers. And that's certainly changed Australia's way of life and the world's way of life really too. When he left the sea, there was a very interesting article in the Advertiser. It was very timely. It was somebody wrote about the 10 commandments of retirement. The first one was, she married you for better or for worse, but not for lunch. And that suited me fine because I didn't have to come home at lunchtime and give him his lunch. He knows I hate cooking, and that evening meal is a real torture. But at least these days he rubs my back for a few minutes before we go and look at the telly.